Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's right at the top of the hour. Some faces I recognize and a few that I do not. My name is Andrew Knapp, and I'm the director of the Hamilton County Communication Center, which is a multi-jurisdictional communication center located in the Cincinnati area. We dispatch for 48 municipalities, been in existence since 1949. And I met Jim, was introduced to Jim about a particular issue that we're all dealing with in public safety, and that Jim wants to present to us a solution, if you will, and have a discussion about how we get to that solution amongst all of us. So with that, Jim, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. I think I know about everybody on the screen. A couple I don't. We'll make some official introductions here in just a little bit. Just kind of give you a heads up. There's a particular attendant to this Zoom call that has to speak right at a certain hour, so we're kind of adjusting for him. But yes, of course, everybody I think on the screen almost there knows me. We'll be introducing a couple folks here. I think can you see the folks off to my side here? Okay, yeah, you got Andy. This is Bob Turner. Bob Turner is a CJIS Endless software provider, and he's here to speak about the Endless architecture today. And right here is Tim Lomax from Texas A&M University. Some of you may know Tim. I see a couple nods. Kind of get started this morning with a little bit of I guess I'd call it a parable. This was September 11th was this month, and I don't think most people know some of the background of the story that occurred. In the late 90s, there were certain people who had discussions about what to do about airline safety. And those people ended up being head of the FAA's Air Marshal program at the time, the International Air Transport Association, their security people, the airlines themselves, FAA personnel. They had all entered into separate discussions about trying to get more security on airlines. And the final decision came down to the person who was in charge of that. I think they called it the Sky Marshals at the time under the FAA. Came down to his opinion and stated very clearly at the end of those conversations, this person's opinion was, quote, "We don't have any security concerns on domestic flights. All of our security concerns are for international flights. So we're not interested in trying to beef up security on domestic flights." Well, as we all know, within about 2 years, 9/11 occurred. And I don't think any of us will ever forget those images. Every year we have that reminder. I think probably one of the most poignant things that happened is after that, there was a review of that. Senatorial offices were involved in this, and they learned of these agencies and organizations that really took no action and didn't put the proper thought or decision making into how to take care of a problem that became an international problem. And I'd have to say, in a way to evaluate that is to say their voices were silent. There wasn't anything came back. It was just kind of hushed up. Well, today is different. We see a problem collectively, the people on this screen, and I'd really like to introduce those subject matter experts that are talking with us today and the ones here. It's not silent voices, but these are the voices of innovation. These are the people that recognize a problem, and I know everybody on this screen almost to a person, and these individuals have stepped up to lend their expertise in academia or their operational expertise. Whether it's fire, public safety, transportation, they are here to make a difference and to bring a new talent or a new capability, not just to a local jurisdiction or a county, but they recognize that there is a system called the National Law Enforcement Telecommunications System that connects every public safety agency in the country. They recognize that that is the important architecture to move this capability into so everybody works in a standardized platform. Before our friend from California gets on to speak with us here briefly, I did want to have Bob, who does a CJIS and Endless work, make a few remarks and kind of explain to those that don't know a lot about what Endless is, to understand what Endless is and who uses it and why we see that as the platform that this innovation will find a home in and soon be a tool that everybody's using.
Okay.
Bob.
Good morning, everyone. Bob Turner, as Jim said, I am a software vendor, but I work very extensively within the law enforcement community. And one of the things that I've done, one of the prouder things I've achieved in my career was being the father of something called ASAP to the PSAP. which is a method that we use for delivery of commercially monitored alarms directly into PSAP CAD systems. Hamilton County is one of the big users in the Cincinnati area. But it became the reason why it's important is that it became a great example of how we were able to turn a piece of law enforcement infrastructure into a solution that worked across all aspects of law enforcement and public safety to improve things. And I'll reach to you. You think it has been a very beneficial thing to your PSAP?
Yeah, for those that aren't familiar with this, the ASAP to PSAP product basically connects participating monitoring centers for alarm companies directly to our computer-aided dispatch system. What this system does at a very high level is every time we get an intrusion alarm, a fire alarm, a panic alarm, a holdup alarm, all of these alarms that are coming into our 911 center, they're very important, but obviously they're not as important as the 911 calls for the traumatic incidents, for the childbirths, the chokings, the CPRs. You know, those are way more emergent and coming to us via 911. But the same telecommunicators are answering the non-emergency calls from alarm companies. Imagine this, if I may, when we take a simple intrusion alarm, we'll get the initial phone call reporting the intrusion alarm. We'll say then, can you please have a key holder, respond to us? We'll get another call about the key holder. We'll get another call saying the key holder has been reached and they're on their way. We'll get another call saying key holder should be there now. They can't find the officer. Where's the officer? We get another call then to say, okay, the alarm is over. What did you find? Was it a real alarm or not? So on average, 3 to 5 phone calls for that one incident. All of us in the PSAP world, the public safety answering points, the 911 centers are struggling with staffing. We do not have enough people to staff our operations on a regular day, much less you think about these. I'm taking 5 phone calls for one incident. What this platform of ASAP to PSAP has done for us, and for the city of Cincinnati uses it, it's a nationwide program now. The alarm goes directly into our computer-aided dispatch system. The folks that receive the alarm do the direct entry. It's automated, which means there's no, in the game of telephone per se, we have more precise information. We have accurate information. There's less accidental transcription of information. It's faster. It goes to us electronically within, milliseconds. And regardless of where the monitoring center could be in California, it could be in Maine, it could be anywhere in between. Here in Cincinnati, we get that alarm within milliseconds of the activation, and with no actual telephone call having to be made. From that point forward, it's bi-directional communication, meaning that if I need a key holder, I enter a command into our system and it goes to the alarm company. The alarm company answers, we get it back. This is eliminated, and actually it winds up using technology to help staff our dispatch centers. And the reason that it helps staff it is because it's now eliminated those incoming phone calls. Most of the larger metropolitan dispatch centers have a 2-tiered dispatch approach where they have call takers on one side of the room, if you will, radio operators on the other. Now I don't need as many call takers to help my inbound traffic. I can pay attention to the Mrs. Smiths that have fallen or having a heart pain or what have you. So
yeah, so this is a great example of how we've been able to use technology, and NLETS has been the key thing to make ASAP to the PSAP work. We're trying to use that same technology that NLETS has to distribute out nationwide to all the law enforcement agencies, public safety agencies, dispatch agencies, different data technologies. One of the challenges we have as we look at environment, law enforcement has good operational infrastructure. We have systems with state CJIS systems like Leeds in Ohio, Klutz in California, places like that. And we have a developing next-gen 911 infrastructure in parallel. But on the fire side, we're really in a weak position where we don't have good technology to be able to network all our public safety agencies together. And this is where trying to then use different technologies on both sides of the house between public safety and law enforcement, I think we can do really some interesting things in terms of extending a data network to really bring Jim's idea forward to really help all of public safety and law enforcement.
Perfect example. I mean, I think probably most public safety people, if you've been in dispatch much, really understand what he's talking about. Staffing is a huge problem in every almost industry, but especially in 911 centers. I'm looking at my roster here, and we, of course, can't see everybody on with respect to this individual. His name is JJ Winston. JJ, are you on this call yet? He's not on the call yet. So he said, let me explain who JJ is. He'll make his own introduction. But JJ is at the National Response Center in San Francisco. JJ's a lead person in the United States Coast Guard. That National Response Center, or we refer to it as the NRC, is responsible when major disasters, from a oil ship crashing in the Gulf to something on a river, or even a large rail incident. They're responsible for calling out assets that the federal government has at their disposal to help with these situations. He's extremely busy right now because one of the things he's doing, he's in charge of salvage in Maui right now. He is up to his elbows and things. And so we kind of wanted to accommodate for JJ so he could just get on a little bit early this morning. He's out on the West Coast, so it's still kind of early. But he's going to pop on and just give a few words of remarks so you'll understand what he does and his perspective on building this. So we're talking about, you know, the understanding of this from small jurisdictions, fire agencies, county emergency management, state level people. Many of these people on the call here were state level people, up to and including the National Response Center. These people have all recognized we've got a tremendous capability shortfall. There's been some incidents that have occurred. We're all aware of the rail incident in the state of Ohio, and the tremendous work to look at new solutions and bring things forward. JJ wanted to talk about his perspective from basically on top of the heap of response capabilities as to why this would be an important tool. And I don't see JJ's name popping up yet. JJ, one more chance before we make some introductions. Okay, well, let me go through and make a couple introductions. And really, we don't need anything other than maybe just a little bit of your background. We'll get into kind of a discussion phase eventually. But let's start with John Orlano. I see you up there in the top, John. You have to unmute. Tell us who you are and what your background was.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Ortolano. I retired as a captain from the state troopers in Arizona before taking a chief of police job in the state of New Mexico at Hobbs. So I went from a 2,000 person agency to a 160 person agency. I retired from law enforcement, but I currently serve as the Safety and Technology Committee Chairman for the National Fraternal Order of Police. It's the largest police organization in America with over 373,000 members. As an active police officer, I also served on the President's Commission on the administration, of criminal justice and the administration of justice, as well as serving as on numerous public safety committees at the state level. That's a quick and dirty on who I am and what I do. Thank you.
Well, you can understand with this background, you'll be talking about a number of things related to transportation and other emergency management from really a variety of levels of government responsibility. Jamie Paget, Dr. Jamie Paget, Rice University.
Morning,
Good morning.
everyone. Hi, I'm Jamie Paget from Rice University. I'm a professor and the department chair in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department here in Houston, Texas. Most of my research expertise is in the area of infrastructure resilience, with a particular focus on transportation infrastructure in the face of disasters and natural hazards. I'm serving on the leadership of several nationwide centers of excellence in this space. So, for example, a NIST-funded Center of Excellence on Community Resilience Planning and leading the complex systems and transportation focus there. A SPEED Center at Rice focused on evacuation and disaster response mitigation, and a cyber infrastructure that's looking at providing data access more for the research community in this space, but thinking about how data access and availability is critical on the ground as well.
Excellent. I mean, that's some pretty high level academia. Speaking of that, Dr. Ben Riddell, Northern Arizona University. Ben. But he might, there he is.
Hi.
Good morning. How are things at Flagstaff?
Things are good in Flagstaff.
There's a reason
Yep.
you live there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a nice morning here. And I'm working from home today. Nice to see you all. I'm Ben Ruddle. I'm a professor at Northern Arizona University. I'm the director of the Fusion Project. And What we do is data science for supply chains and critical infrastructures. Most of our funding is from the Department of Defense, but we're also working with FEMA and DHS and a number of other partners. And we of course do research with that information as well. Our website is fusion.us, FEWSION.us. You can feel free to check that out if you're on your computers.
Excellent, thank you. So DoD funded research about really the logistics of saving our economy in the face of some dire situation that may affect the social fabric of this nation in case there was something that interrupted food, manufacturing, like whatever it may be that
Yep.
fertilizes crops, whatever it could be. I know you and I've met, we've talked about what you do. It's extremely important. But it's exciting to see that DoD is looking those directions kind of towards that future planning. You know, we're talking about planning a new capability, and that's what your work's about. And of course, infrastructure plays a tremendous role.
Yep, that's right. Situational awareness is what the tools provide about what the system looks like and what its status is.
Thank you. I mean, I've got a lot of things I want to ask you in a bit. I'm pointing at the screen. I guess I should be looking there. I'm going to kind of bounce from place to place. We've heard from some academia. And I'm going to introduce this guy here in just a minute. I let him talk about himself a little bit. But let's talk about operational people. You know, are any of the folks on this call public safety people? Someone from DNR, Department of Natural Resources, is going to be on the call. Anybody
Yep.
from DNR?
Hello, DNR here. You want me to go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, Ryan, I just wanted to introduce who you were.
Yep, Ryan Trout. I'm the Assistant Chief for the Law Enforcement Section for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Back to a couple of the experts that want to talk here today. Let's go to fire. I see Jeff Case here. A remarkable background, and I'll let him talk about himself a little bit. He doesn't usually, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, Jeff Case. I'm retired from Phoenix Fire Department after 33 years. After retiring from there, I spent 2 years as the fire chief out in Avondale, which is just west of Phoenix. I was part of our task force responding to national emergencies. And one of the areas I managed was our dispatch center for about 3 years. And so again, a variety of fire background experiences, just like I'm sure a lot of you. And yeah, nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, it's good to see you this morning. I think it's interesting you had that, you know, I mean, Phoenix Fire had a national reputation, has a national reputation as a incident command thought leader, has been for a long time. You go from that to a really relatively small agency still within that mutual aid system, but I'm sure it was a totally different environment when you had to go to a small agency and understood the limited resources of a small agency.
Yeah, and the beauty of our system, much like I'm sure across the nation, is we have an automatic response system. So we bordered Phoenix directly, but we had a major freeway system on both ends, east and west and south of us, multiple ends, and the impact that had, as well as managing the Phoenix International Raceway, which was a large event that brought in on a given week an additional 100,000 people. So those kind of events that trigger the need for, you know, cross communication and connection is critical, which is, I think, speaks to what we're here for today.
Well, let's get back to tech. We talked technology with Bob here a few minutes ago. Brandon Mason, I know I saw your face, Brandon. You still on the call, Brandon?
Yeah, I just had to
There you are.
mute myself.
How are things in Colorado?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Fall's starting to get fall colors here already. Had a little bit of early cold.
I've been to where Brandon lives. It's a beautiful part of the country.
So
Tell us a little bit about your background, Brandon, and I think you're interested, you know, you and I have gotten to know each other over a period of time, what your interest is and why that is there.
yeah, I've been building software for over 10 years for startup companies, and met Jim, and I was interested in disaster response, emergency response. I'd just seen that had been a problem, particularly with the Houston hurricanes, the Mexico City earthquakes, really watching first responders get kind of overwhelmed with the volume of the need in those circumstances, and we had grassroots triaging happening, and I realized there really wasn't software to dedicated to take care of these kind of volume of incidents. So met Jim and started working with Jim, built a software prototype for Jim's system this last year in 2022. And I'm excited to see where this goes. I think it's a valuable solution.
You worked at, you don't have to name it, but one of the largest insurance providers in the nation, and kind of an innovation role there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I worked for State Farm in an R&D capacity. My team also built the current site behind mastermind.com, which was released by Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, and we've done some other notable things over time.
I learned of Brandon actually through a university in Phoenix. There was one that was going to be on this Zoom. It's the University of Advancing Technology. The provost was going to be on the call. He has some meeting out of state, so he had to make a trip today, not able to be on it. But through that university, which was referred to me through a congressional staff person, I learned of folks that led me to Brandon, really kind of touting his expertise in what he had done at State Farm, and his kind of cutting edge ability with cybersecurity and other issues. And there's a lot of other personalities I want to hear from today, but as far as like the group of people who are in advisory capacity, I want to introduce Tom Donathan, who is in transportation in Arizona. I'll let him talk about who he is. You might have to unmute there, Tom, if you're still on mute, but if you can just kind of give a quick download as to what your positions were, and we'll kind of get into some more discussion later. We want to show you a video in a little bit, and there's a person on this video who most people in the Southwest know who he is. Many people across the country know who he is. He narrates because of his belief and his longstanding position to do what he can to further this work. He's narrating a video I'd like you to see right now. Annie, can you take us to the video?
You're welcome, guys. We just cured anxiety. Oh my God! Jesus Christ, we almost died. Let's get the out of here. Oh my God. Okay, yeah, we need to just get the out of here. Hold on.
It's hard for anyone to watch that. It's even harder to live to. Hi, my name is Jason Schechterly, and I'd like to explain a little about myself and why I'm speaking directly to anyone watching this video. On March 26, 2001, while working as a Phoenix police officer, I was stopped momentarily at a city traffic light when I was hit by a taxi cab doing an excessive highway speed, estimated at over 100 miles per hour, causing my car to burst into flames, trapping me inside. Thankfully, there was a fire truck in my intersection. These incredibly brave first responders were given an opportunity to get me out of that car and off to one of the best burn centers in the country. I suffered burns to 43% of my body, my neck, head, and face being the worst. They were 4th degree. That's a term I had never heard, and my family was given the grim news that I most likely would not survive these injuries. Over the last 22 years, in what has been a long, arduous, ongoing recovery process, I was able to regain a little bit of my eyesight. I was able to figure out how to use my hands again. I was able to live with this appearance. And now today, I use my platform, I use my voice, and I use this space for causes that I believe in. I'll state it plainly. The problem is that government partners have simply failed to leverage the same common technology tools, smartphones, GPS, and software to locate and deliver the fastest response from the emergency support services our lives depend on. Emergency support services such as towing to open the traffic lanes efficiently, hazmat remediation vendors, or power line repair teams. I mean, if across this country we know where the pizza delivery and windshield repair guys are, can't America find the closest tow truck? Our nation is long overdue for a solution to these critical national needs. And we need it before the next Category 5 hurricane, before the next set of skidding tires approaches. You gotta admit, as the on-scene incident manager or dispatcher providing that vital link of clear communications, when minutes become a multiplier for casualties, is it your desire to provide the fastest response of mitigation services? Of course it is. Well, I'd like to share for a moment some incredibly good news about a solution that answers this long-felt but unmet need. Designed for use within the National Law Enforcement Telecommunications Systems architecture, processes to leverage the cell phone location of emergency support services like towing have been created, tested in a clinical setting, and patented internationally. Once embedded in inlets, this data will enable automated selection and delivery for the closest towing to any roadway incident nationwide. You'll be speaking with the team developing that capability during this meeting later today, and that team's work will soon resolve a wide spectrum of critical national needs, from millions of transportation incidents annually to regional weather emergencies or railway chemical disasters that can impact national waterways and public health. But don't just take my word on this. Let's look at the situations we just reviewed and talk with some national experts.
We're going to stop here for a discussion phase to talk to some of these people we just introduced, and I'm going to call one more time. JJ, did you make the call yet today? JJ Winston? Well, it's likely that what he was doing with that operation out in Maui is probably superseded being on the Zoom call. But I want to make sure I introduce a couple of people and acknowledge that they're on this call. As you can see, we have just a small group of people here, and then we have others out watching what we're recording to make a good record of it and move further with this conversation outside of this room and the people on the Zoom today. Senator Blessing's office, State Senator Blessing's office has a couple staff folks. I think is it Isaac and couldn't hear you. We're not getting your volume. Well, we'll take a second to get their volume on. We're going to go through a few of the topics that this problem approaches, but one of the things I wanted to say is that what happened here within this state in the recent past was a large transportation incident that state senators formed a select committee on. Senator Blessing's office was part of that, along with several others that have taken note of this effort that we're moving forward. And they have either assigned staff or are reviewing this video that we're making. So really these discussions that we have today, I'm still not getting you there, Isaac.
Can you hear me now? No.
There we go. Something happened. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry about that. But yeah, I know Senator Blessing would have loved to be here. He's right now in actually a different committee. But yeah, he's just like what you were saying, he's in the select committee of rail, trying to handle East Palestine and the issues going on there when it comes to safety. It's a top priority. And we're here to really just learn as much as possible and get that back to Senator Blessing. It seems like this is really important work and Ohio definitely needs it. So appreciate, having us on this Zoom call.
I know your schedules are extremely busy, so I do appreciate it. And the senator's life work has a lot to do with technology itself. I believe he does some engineering work, I think is his background. So I think he's somebody that would certainly get what we're wanting to move forward with all this talent. So thanks for being on that. I just wanted to do a shout out to that committee because Ohio immediately took action and brought together a committee to review this and really kind of get down to the what are the recommendations? What are we looking? What went wrong? What went right? And how can we improve the situation? And to kind of spin to a little bit of a summary of those things, though I've read the report that came out just about a week ago and the findings. And what relates directly to what we're here to help improve is the decision-making process in these large-scale problems, who has the command of incidents, who has the knowledge of things to continue to be in that command role. Really, one of the basic statements from the Ohio Department of Transportation said we need to create and further opportunities with private sector, government, and first responders to improve that relationship so we have a more efficient response for the next one of these things. God forbid Ohio has it, but for everybody else that's working on it. So I think it's this common theme about improved communication. And as we were talking about, most of these people here have some type of public safety background. Actionable information is a great phrase to use. And that's often kind of I would say a failing. It's you can't get enough actionable information when you show up in a situation where it's 10 degrees outside here in Ohio and a local fire department shows up at a nationally reviewed and understood problem that occurred. It would be tough for anybody to make great decisions until you started gathering enough information. I've been involved in other disaster drills and actual live events, but that decision-making for the handoff for the next level is always very complicated. And in this one, I think it was further complicated because it was a railroad and a railroad right-of-way with, the ownership of a property, with the ownership of a train and private companies owning all the rail cars. I mean, it was a very complicated thing, but bringing out the right assets and making decisions is what we're trying to improve. So in the theme of that great report that came out, I want to do a shout out to Senator Hoagland, Senator Reineke, who was the chair of that committee, and also Senator Blessing in his office. And I was glad other staff wanted to be here, but with the amount of responsibility that these people have got, they couldn't all be on this call. So thank you both for being on this call. Just kind of want to acknowledge that first. At this point, let's talk about some of the events that came up in that video that talk about what we're trying to create. When it says a data infrastructure for emergencies, there is information that's out there. It's like It's like this cell phone. I mean, there's information being recorded now and it's somewhere out there about where this phone's at. There's data all over the place about where the cell phone is and where other resources are at, but it's never been consolidated into a usable cybersecure, because this is a national situation. And I'd have to perhaps yield to Bob on this question. I believe the Endless architecture is owned by all 50 states.
Yeah, the Endless is a corporation. It's a 501c3 corporation that's member owned. And if you know how 501c3s, they're a membership pool. The membership pool are the state police organizations of each of the 50 states. So as a result, it's a organization that's has a lot of characteristics of a corporation, so that work can be done without having to go through a legislative process and getting a bill signed. But at the same time, they have the trust of the public safety community because they're part of it. And so as a result, that makes them in a very unique situation to really facilitate the data infrastructure to be able to do things, just from that perspective.
So it's this architecture that every state has obviously a vested interest in. It's connected between essentially every public safety, every police agency. And the reason for
Every
that
police
is because
agency, yeah.
of the
They are
data.
law enforcement oriented. That's kind of what I had talked about earlier. Law enforcement has a much better technology infrastructure through the state and national levels. Unfortunately, fire does not. Fire tends to be very local. You do something at either a local or county level. When you move into law enforcement, we end up with state CJIS systems, and then ultimately at the top level, you have the FBI's NCIC and NLETS's switch as well. And those infrastructure on the law enforcement side provide much more access to the participating law enforcement, and in some states, the public safety entities to be able to do things. And that's something that we can leverage off of to be able to do some of these things, because we've had demonstrated success with things like ASAP to PSAP.
Excellent. And the point being, some of those phrases, maybe not for everybody on this call are familiar, but essentially public safety police agencies had to build that architecture because many things we do. I was a trooper for years. Some of the people on this call were troopers or chiefs of police. I have to have a relationship with another agency because I'm acting on information they're sending me over this system, whether it's arresting somebody or taking some other type of official action. Fire doesn't have that need, so they never developed that type of relationship. So really law enforcement, having done this for many years before, but Endless has been
Since the
around
1930s, actually the first, criminal justice information systems are some of the oldest information sharing infrastructure in the world. And our basic technology for this criminal justice information exchange goes back to 1930s. So some of you are apparently saying, but computers as we know them didn't exist at that time. You're correct, but teletypes did. And back in the 1930s, after you got past Wall Street and the news media industry, law enforcement was the largest users of teletypes in this country. And that's where it started from.
So that's the background. So the architecture has been around, the Endless architecture has been around for about 60 years.
70. Yeah.
70 years. So anyhow, very seasoned, and it does have a cybersecurity requirement, and I believe they have an FBI audit.
FBI CJIS security policy dictates what all law enforcement deals with in this country relative to criminal data that we deal with. So there's it's not perfect, but it's certainly better thought out than a lot of environments. And so we've got the foundations of what we can use in that environment, as long as we're sharing between all of law enforcement and public safety.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's move into some of these topics. One of the first ones, and I'll introduce you because he's here in the flesh, Tim Lomax from Texas A&M University. Let's talk about the use of this in transportation and why it's valuable. John Ortolano, are you still on? Can't hear you. Not getting you. You're still showing. Oh.
Yeah, I'm still here.
John, you had a variety of experience, certainly with Arizona State Patrol, Chief of Police. You've been in different states working, and obviously your position with the National FOP Committee is Safety and Technology. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you are, Jim.
Well, you have a great overview as to what's going on in this nation about what is the common use of technology for recovery from transportation incidents. And my background from the research I've done is that there are, even to this day, some small situations where a private company may be trying to run like a sophisticated AAA membership in a community somewhere saying, hey, we'll watch tow trucks and get the closest one. But as far as an automation of finding the closest tow truck through a sophisticated system like Inlets, does that exist?
Well, there, as far as a national system, no, obviously there's no national system. And the use of technology has been long overdue in law enforcement. We unfortunately, the body cameras have captured the media and the public's attention because of certain incidences that have taken place, but they're ignoring the day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute things that are taking place nationwide that we can utilize technology for. Because you mentioned earlier that so many police agencies and fire agencies, they're understaffed, they're overworked, and we need to utilize technology wherever possible to free up the actual human beings to do the work that the human beings need to do. And along those lines, you know, we were talking about tow trucks. You know, we can use this technology for everything. To recover from any type of incident, whether it's a small incident as a roadblock, from an accident up to natural disasters. I was fortunate enough to be at command level up to a chief of police, and all these incidences, whether they're small, say it's something that a sergeant can handle, or up to needing command staff to handle, or multi-agency incident command system. We have to know where our resources are, but also what are the resources that are available so we can get to the scene and recover this scene. And we're not utilizing technology to help the people in the field make an educated, informed decision on how we can best utilize what resources we get. But more importantly, if we don't have the resources, get the additional resources coming from other agencies that can assist us. And I'm very passionate in this because I've seen the deficiencies for so long, so many near misses out on the highways that I've seen. But unfortunately, I've been to too many police officers' funerals, people being struck by cars, people being involved in secondary collisions and sent to the hospital or to the grave. And the people that are here today can help take action to help move these things forward, so we don't have to be have another negative headline for something that we could have prevented.
Don, well said. Thank you. And I want to, along with respecting people's times, and not that anybody's is less important or more, but I know Dr. Paget has some other responsibilities this morning. Her work with these NIST centers and this SSPEED acronym, it has to do with evacuations from disasters. I wanted to give you a chance, and I was looking at my watches to kind of check the time. I want to keep you in a certain block of it here so you can be freed up for the other things you're doing today. And by the way, thanks again for being here. But your work involves really a backbone of all these disaster preparedness and things that you're studying. A backbone, of course, disaster situations is the infrastructure use in order to remove people from harm's way or bring in resources. Did you want to have some reflections of yourself? I mean, the benefit of having academia, people that have that voice from that educated field that has done research, the pairing of that with Texas A&M's work and such, it's incredibly important to this, because once this gets in front of the right Senate committee or the right group considering funding this with either tax dollars or some other source, it's really important to have folks like you on it. And I'm not trying to build it up any more than I have to, but I just want to tell you it's really important. I've seen this through a number of years working on this to try to bring the right people to the table. Academia plays a great role in it, highly respected. So from your vantage point in academia, what are your thoughts? And if you have some level of commitment to this that you want to express, it would be appreciated. This recording of this video is very likely going to be seen by others. So we want to understand, what is Rice University consider? How do they consider the importance of this, and what would they like to do to help further this?
Thanks for giving me a chance to comment, Jim. You brought together an amazing group here, and I'm sure you'll hear from Tim and the TTI group, the Texas Transportation Institute group, really roped me in. And the initial, it's been a couple of years back now that we've been fleshing out ideas and discussing the importance of actionable information, actionable data. And I think from my own kind of research group's perspective and then some of the national scale centers that we're a part of. Yes, there's a lot of exciting work going on in the academic space, whether it be on how to fuse different data sources so that we can get the best of both worlds in terms of, what's high quality data versus what's timely data. Do we have different biases? So there's indeed research out there that I think can support this. There's a lot of predictive models and then verification and validation studies that show how important transportation infrastructure is and its own recovery to other things. Of course, we look at the physical response, the restoration of transportation infrastructures, but that has cascading impacts on other interdependent systems, the power, the water, the critical facility access, longer term housing, restoration, schools. And so we look at this as a real cornerstone in the immediate aftermath for timely response and safety, and then the long-term recovery. But what I'm really excited, I think, to see is this style of partnership. We don't want the information and data and models that we're developing to, one, go to waste, and we don't want them to sit on a shelf. We want to see how our research community can be useful in supporting these types of really important endeavors to get information, timely, actionable information in the right hands. There's a whole community of scholars who are developing situational awareness tools, but they need to be tailored. They need to be tailored to the right responders, users, incidents. And I think this is a prime opportunity that we have. I can envision that this could be the first phase of many. I think there's been some really exciting ideas around leveraging inlets and getting that national platform for timely information in the right people's hands. I can imagine an overlay down the line where we fuse information about different hazards and what is the expected flood conditions on roadways across the region. That's the #1 cause of deaths during flood events, is driving into inundated roadways, and we know it impairs emergency response. So I think there's an opportunity to leverage and fuse a lot of different layers of useful content on here. So I'm excited to be a part of that ground up.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And that's a great follow-up point for an emergency manager that I believe is still on this call. But does anybody between fire, senatorial offices, or anybody else that has a question for Dr. Padgett want to offer that up at this point about emergency management and what she sees, or if they have a question about her viewpoint or anything before we let her go, because she does have a lot of things to do today, and she graced us with about an hour of her time. We're going to have to, I look at my watch only because I want to make sure that she gets onto her other tasks today. Does anybody have a question for Dr. Padgett? Well, she was pretty complete in what she said. So,
thanks, Jim.
Jamie, I want to thank you. And at any point that you want to stay on or leave because of things going on, we understand. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're going to move on just kind of quickly. Dr. Ruddle, are you on with us still?
Sure am.
There he is. I think she brought up so many great points, but when we talk about recovery from incidents, the use of our military, I mean, obviously, most of us who are out working on highways and public safety people understand that the interstate system was originally called the Defense and Interstate Highway System, designed after the Second War because we really kind of understood just how critical that was for our national security. You have a lot of DoD funding for what you're working on. When you look at, specifically your fusion center work that has to deal with keeping supply chains active in order to produce the food in this nation or manufacturing other very vital things from medicines to everything else. Your view of, and again, I want to give you an opportunity to give a delivery on what you think of with the transportation field and emergency management in general. Or when you look at the incident that happened in Ohio on the rail systems, I mean, there is a colossal amount of freight that goes across this country that would just amaze people if they knew what those numbers were. But Ben, when you look at those things and you look at the technology we're talking about bringing to the forefront to where we're bringing the earliest responsive assets to everything from a tow truck to something getting out to a rail site like a crane that goes out and lifts rail cars. The importance of clearing up these scenes and restoring that infrastructure of merchandise moving on rail or people moving on the ground for their own safety or other economic reasons in this nation. What is your interest as far as your background and work, and how do you see a role for your organization helping craft a tool, at least this first iteration of it, that we put together and get within Inlets?
Yeah. So I'm an academic. I'm also an engineer. I'm not an emergency manager. I don't have that background. So understand my comments from that perspective. I think that a big gap, and it's already been alluded to in this conversation, with cascading failures through infrastructure, power, transportation, et cetera, water. And that is what my program works on, is that infrastructure data and those cascading failures. And the big gap, there's two of them, and they're at the connections between things. Okay, so for the sake of efficiency and accountability and focus, we have an emergency management system, and law enforcement, defense, et cetera. But even in the infrastructure sector, you have highway departments, you have water departments. They're very siloed, and that's necessary. That's not actually a mistake. That's by design, because when you're doing something important, you need to have clear lines of authority, resources, communication, scope, right? But the problem with that model is that the siloing creates fragmented information and fragmented communication, and we've already brought that up, right? This was one of the big problems pre-September 11th, and we're still trying to resolve that weakness. So yet, when you have siloed systems that are siloed by a sector of responsibility, you also have systems that are siloed by geography, right? So emergency management is mostly a county function, and in cities there's even more local responsibility. Law enforcement has an even finer focus in terms of its area of responsibility, and so you have siloing cutting two different ways, geographically and also sectorally. And what we need to do is we need to enable communication and situational awareness across both of those types of silos, geographically and sectorally. Why? Well, what you don't know can hurt you. We know that now, right? So something that's happening in the power sector can and will take out your water system. Something that's happening in the power system can and will take out your telecom. Something that's happening in the Port of Los Angeles can and will take out your supply chain if your supply chain is coming from SoCal or from Asia. Something that happens in East Palestine, Ohio can and will disrupt what's happening down the rail corridor from there. And I should say, in that example, there was also a major impact on water supplies, because there was a fear of contamination. And so everybody who was downstream of East Palestine had to close their water intakes, right? So this is the type of situational awareness and communication that we need to enable. And it's such a complicated system that I think that the best approach to this is through mapping the supply chains and the critical infrastructure systems, because that narrows it down from us in our silo needing to focus on the whole world, which is too much. to us in our silo, we know that there's a short list of 10 or 20 connections that we really need to be aware of because they can affect us. And we have data systems that are in place to tell us what's going on with those connections and create that awareness. So that when something happens that's not, that is our problem, but it's not in our area of responsibility, we can anticipate that and start to act and react. We know who to talk to. So I think that's the gap, is understanding, creating that awareness across those silos geographically and sectorally. And that's something that my team is trying to work on, and others. And that's the connection with this software application as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to, before, because I know an operational person's up here. He's with the Lancaster, Ohio Fire Department. I wanted to give him a chance to reflect perhaps on bouncing back to operational people, especially our partners in the fire sector, how important they see it that assets are brought out to clear scenes more quickly, so the multiple fire people out on a scene on a roadway are out of harm's way. I know that's their highest priority. That's why God gave them those giant trucks to park out at scenes. But in reality, they understand the secondary collisions are serious, and they've also lost people. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the highest percentage of firefighter deaths is from transportation incidents.
That is correct.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for former Chief Jeff Case, or would you like to kind of reflect on how you see this being a benefit? Well, let's say everything between you handling an accident on State Route 33 in Lancaster, or, God forbid, being called in the middle of the night, even an HC is fairly sizable as Lancaster's, to go out to a hazmat situation that you arrive at and all of a sudden realize there's more going on here than what this city and probably this county is going to be able to handle. The idea we would be able to open up for fire agencies the same data field that's going to be an endless to say, where are resources that might apply? We have a catalog of resources. Highway patrol is using tow trucks all night long. It's probably the highest use of it. But what's fire going to want? They may want hazmat remediation and or assets from DOT, or maybe truckloads of sand or something.
EPA, Chemtrek, there's a ton of them, ton of resources out there that we have to reach out individually. But yeah, we cover 33, which carries tons of hazardous waste. On that aspect of it, needing people there at a quick time with our dispatch centers, again, they're understaffed. They take hundreds of calls, and what happens is they have to find what we need. Well, they do when they get time, so everything gets delayed. Another aspect of doing cross agency, I also work as a part-time paramedic in the Hocking County, in the Hocking Hills. We work with ODNR. We have search and rescue teams that we have to coordinate with, and it's all stages of trying to build it to make it happen. If there was a way to link it together quickly, it would save valuable time. A lot of searches, in the area of the Hocking Hills with the cliffs and the falls and the fatalities, time is of the essence. So the faster we can get our resources there, the better off people have chances to survive.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I people don't realize it, but that's actually his living room. He took an old ambulance and decorated his house with the insides of an ambulance. That's where he lives, actually. I know this guy.
I'm on duty.
That's you go on mute before you say anything.
But yes, I'll let me introduce myself too. I work full-time for the city of Lancaster. I've been a firefighter and in the business for 30 plus years. I'm a paramedic, instructor. I do fire instructor, rope rescue, all the good stuff. And I've been fortunate not to have to deal with large incidences, but small incidents requiring a lot of agencies I have been a part of.
An incident command is a complicated thing.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about egos of people. I'm talking simply about who has the resources and statutorily or by practice, who's responsible for something. So it's a tough job. Jeff, I'm pointing at the screen, and maybe I should be looking here. Jeff, is there anything you wanted to reflect on? I mean, I know we've had a lot of conversation. I don't need to have you review anything you've already discussed, but I mean, you've seen it from, I mean, incident command gurus, Phoenix Fire for decades, likely still is. Any other thoughts on your, before we move on to a couple other operational people like Mr. Worthman there and such?
Yeah, Jim, I don't have a ton to add to what Jason, John, and Randy now said is in terms of the details and applications of this. I'll just say a significant portion of my career, about 15 years, was as a shift commander, as a deputy chief. And in that operational mode, I can tell you there were countless situations where the potential danger to us and other responders from the DPS side was significant in waiting for that tow truck. I mean, there's tons of applications to this, but that simple mechanism, the access to that quick resources is huge. If you look at what I dealt with from a dispatch center, managing our dispatch center, we were a regional dispatch center for 26 cities, all of which intersected with major highways and pathways carrying hazardous materials, which is a big deal. But more importantly was that one car incident where somebody has to remain on scene to protect the citizen while we're trying to maneuver ourselves into a transportation capability position. The ability to move that off site was quickly. It even led to, I won't go down this path, but it even led to some challenging relationship issues between us and DPS, where their perceived priority, or they perceived their priority as being different than ours. And when in fact it wasn't. The priority was scene safety and moving traffic and moving flow. But to do that, we had to first treat and care for people. But again, it was said so well by John, Randy, and then Jason, of course, in that video. This becomes personal when we apply people that I could list right now who were injured or killed as a result of incidents. So that's why I stay connected to you, Jim. That's why I think this is important. And I hope that the energy that this is creating today moves us forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, I want to touch with a couple of folks from Arizona, but while he's here, before he thinks he's forgotten, I wanted to talk a little bit more about this individual right here, Mr. Tim Lomax. He was known personally by the U.S. Secretary of Transportation. I'm not talking about somebody at Federal Highways, but I'm talking about the person appointed by President Bush, who was in charge of all surface and air transportation for the nation. I had an opportunity to interface with this person shortly after her retirement. It was Mary Peters. The first name she mentioned out of the bag, she says, you need to talk about this project with Tim Lomax at Texas A&M. So for these many years, I've had the honor of working with Tim, but if you just want to, and I know we're trying to respect everybody's time here this morning, kind of not keep it too long, but everything from the movement of economy to the vehicle-borne emissions that are characteristic with large congestion situations and the secondary collisions which cause so many more serious accidents and those percentage. If you can just kind of hit a couple of those as a highlight, I think there's a multitude of reasons why transportation and the academia that has the backing of those statistics can help move this forward through our political offices. Just a few comments.
I'm a pointy-headed ivory tower guy. I don't do ops other than I was in charge of special event football game day traffic at Texas A&M, small stadium, 100,000 people. But the real work that I've done has been on the kind of measuring the effect of urban traffic congestion and then the solutions and the issue of, what do we get when we build a highway or widen a highway is a component of what we do, the economics and mobility effects, but also on the other solutions to kind of get the most out of our dollar. And that's where incident response, situational awareness, understanding how the system's operating at this moment and what can we do to make it better. We've got lots of monitoring equipment, but how do we get the most out of that in the ways of not just knowing about the problem, but what do we do about it and how can we respond? What are our options? Sort of pushing on the need for urgency, whether there's an incident or not an incident, just let's respond, let's do something, let's be accountable for the taxpayers' money. And that's where you get to the effect of, statistics like for every minute that a crash or an event is happening, you get another 3% increase in the possibility of a secondary crash. And for every minute a roadway is blocked, you get 4 more minutes of traffic congestion. That kind of stuff is kind of where we intersect with this effort.
And you talked last night about kind of the expediency of some of these new technologies outside of getting, a quicker tow truck, but kind of photogrammetry products and different laser products that were allowing an expedited documenting of a scene.
Building on it's sort of a technology and a policy element that you got to work together, but there's ways to respond faster. There's ways to understand better what's going on. And everybody's got a cell phone, as Jason said. Everybody's got a cell phone. We know where stuff is, and we can know what the condition is.
Well, I use that as a segue to bring in Mr. Worthland into the conversation. If you want to explain a little bit of your background, he was piloting, state trooper, a variety of things, but also has something that is kind of a follow of that. Don, would you like to make a comment about this type of work and how it relates to what you've done up to and including, I believe it's drone work that you've been engaged in?
Yeah, hi, my name is Don. I've been currently working with drones, doing like cell phone tower inspections, but my career started in the U.S. Army in 1975, and I've been pretty much doing continuous airborne data collection, as we now call it, from the U.S. Army through Arizona DPS. I was a pilot at Tucson Ranger, to flying surveillance and reconnaissance in Iraq and Afghanistan, providing information to JSOC and SOG type elements on the ground. I've seen a wide spectrum of how the assets can be used. One of the things that comes to mind as people have been talking today is we always need to review the incident that was just happened. And one of the ways that we can do that and learn from it is through the different technologies of drones or manned aviation with cameras and sensors on them to be able to record these and then actually feed them live to the incident commander so that as the drone is out there operating, the incident command can actually see live for themselves what's going on and be able to make a better and quicker assessment of the situation. And then the follow-on stuff, like after the train derailments or those types of things, can do follow-on work and can do much better cleanup and agricultural identification of things that have been harmed, and to make the area whole again.
One of the things we had discussed, a few years ago, you were engaged with a company that does drone assessment or they respond to disaster scenes and had a role in drone assessment of large oil tank storage areas near coastal areas and some sites off the coast, like Gulf drilling sites off the coast. I recall that conversation because specifically they had just met with, I believe it was Department of Homeland Security, who was interested in something that dovetails into what we're trying to work on it. Could you explain what that was just briefly?
Yeah, sure. I used to teach a college course at Cochise College here in Arizona. One of my former students became a vice president of the company that Mr. Meserly is talking about, and they currently are still being deployed to different oil rig type disasters to be able to record them, like I was talking about a second ago. I don't know if I'm hitting exactly where you want to go with this, Jim, but
what I'm talking about was their desire to have, one of the things they were looking for was the capability of knowing where assets were and their response time to a coastal emergency that they felt that they needed to call them, how many were available, their status of availability, and their response time, which was something that even in that one specific sector of response, that wasn't available.
That's correct, yes. And because tracking any asset, no matter what its level of usefulness is probably the most important thing. And when you were explaining to me what the system you're looking at is doing, it gets the asset to the scene much quicker. And then you can also control little bit of the training on that person is going to have in getting there. But, you know, many phone calls sometimes to get one operator into an area and assisting the incident commander in completing his task of information.
Excellent. Thanks for putting it like that. Chris, I see you on the screen here. Chris Rue. And you can unmute if you'd like. I'm not sure which agency you're with or organization.
I work with Corey Township Fire, and I sit with Andy and the rest of the Hamilton County Comm Center guys, just on the communication committee for the entire county. So it's really a big collaborative group from my end.
So you're OPCOM. You do work on OPCOM?
No, I'm every third day firefighter.
Okay. Well, excuse my misunderstanding. One of the things I want to make sure a phrase that we build into this, and this is for Senator Blessing's staff, who's still on this call, very patiently listening. We're talking about taking something that's been done manually since Eisenhower was president. In other words, radio call problem, pick up phone, get number, dial number, wait, they didn't answer. We have a protocol to call back, pick up phone, that type of scenario to get an asset when we're in situations where lives are at stake. We're talking about the automation of that. As people do with a cell phone, looking for an Uber. They give a location, they ask for what they want. They aren't picking up the phone and talking to 4 or 5 drivers. It automates that request. And one of the things that I've talked with Andy about, and I think anybody that works in fire and communication understands, you know, the less work you give a dispatcher, you don't want them looking at a screen with 6,000 tow trucks in Southern Ohio. You want them to be able to bring something down that says, in an endless type of data, just like looking at a driver's license check field, they bring it down, they assess what they need through the catalog of resources very quickly, send a message, the system automates a message to confirmation and information back without anybody picking up the phone and dialing each other. I'm assuming as you, in the work that you do, you would understand that could be kind of a force multiplier. In other words, it doesn't tie somebody up on the phone. It gets responses much more quickly somewhere.
Yeah, from our aspect, from what I deal with every day, you know, the Hamilton County Communications has made a lot of pretty significant changes. And one of the big things is to take a lot of those manual tasks off some of their operators. They're short staffed just like everybody else. And it's been, you know, a little bit trying to start, but it's come tenfold much better since that's all started.
Thank you.
And I think one thing I touched on, Jason's video was on, it was one of the things that has always bothered me, having been in the business. I was a firefighter and a fire dispatcher 40 years ago when I came out of high school. And, you know, towing rotations are a great example of that. And, you know, what it speaks to is not so much the rotation is necessarily inherently wrong, but we've got certain private providers who look at public safety and emergency response as a revenue business, okay? There's nothing inherently wrong with people making money. I'm a capitalist at the end of the day, and we have to deal with the fact that they have to make money. But the engagement that we have to is just because you're the next one in line doesn't mean you're the right response for an emergency. And starting to get to a higher level of, you know, service, you know, we call them SLA, service level agreements in the commercial world, and getting into that model that says, okay, if you want to be responding, and I'll use tow just because we talked about wreckers and the like, you know, you want to do it, that means every one of your units, whether it's a phone or a GPS unit or something, we have to know where your units are, so that when we're dispatching, we're grabbing the closest unit, and the tiebreaker is you're on the next up in the rotation. We start changing away from being a revenue model, which is what rotation's really about, to one that's the fastest response, and starting to understand we've got to come to a different level of relationship with our private providers. I don't have a problem with anybody making a buck, but we've got to do something that works for both sides.
Excellent. John Ortolano, are you still on the call? There you are. You might have had more of this information as a chief and just kind of reflecting on what he was saying. Do you have an idea? I remember hearing some numbers in the past, but on a dollar basis, how much did it cost for you to have an officer in a marked car working a beat somewhere. I heard a number around $100 or maybe a little bit over per hour. It's probably gone up since, I learned those facts, but you have a general idea what that hourly cost to have a public safety person out on the street is?
Well, it'll vary immensely because if you take into account the employee related costs and obviously their base salary and the operation of the vehicle, at a bare minimum, you're looking at $100 an hour. I would say, depending upon the seniority of the person, you'd be probably looking at a couple $100 an hour, and taking into account all their pay and benefits.
Yeah, the point being, if we're cutting back 20% on a response time for tow and you free that person up to take another call, you're saving the taxpayer. And again, we all understand the revenue idea of tow companies having to make enough money to pay a guy to be out there diesel in his truck to go. But we're also looking at the other end of that. We're talking about the taxpayer and that community that's trying to hire people and keeping it within a budget. So it would be an important tool to kind of help as best we can cut waste from scene response.
Absolutely, Jim. And to take it one step further, you're saving taxpayer money. But the follow-up of what Dr. Paget was saying about timely actionable information, getting the timely actionable information in the hands of everybody involved here for these incidents saves lives, and you can't put a price on that.
Thank you. I want to kind of get to the point where we wrap up with the rest of the video, which is very short, and then final comments from anybody if they have. I understand we're getting kind of close to that hour and a half mark. That's a long time. Isaac, I see you there. Isaac, was there any question from your perspective, from what you've been hearing, that you like when you relay this information on to Senator Blessing? Because I'm going to be following up with the folks at Senator Reineke's, Senator Hoagland's office to talk about what was discussed here today. Is there something from your perspective that we haven't addressed that you were hoping to hear about?
I mean, you kind of already addressed the big thing, obviously with Ohio, it's East Palestine, and trying to deal with the aftermath of that and trying to think, how do we make sure something like that doesn't happen again? And again, with what you've been talking about, fast time response is key when it comes to recovery. And that's sort of at least what we've heard from down in, up here in the State House is sort of the address bigger. So I think you addressed a lot of the big things. No, I think you did a good job and I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And I want to make a quick mention to Mr. Worthland. There are companies that do response for, they're paid to respond to certain things with drones. I didn't see it in the after action report, and it's probably volumes of stuff that weren't in a small report, quote unquote, small report. But I can only imagine, and in case any of the fire people on here want to say something, how tough it must have been for somebody at nighttime to show up at that scene and try to make any assessment as to whether they even had the opportunity in their wildest expectations of their own agency to manage that. And having a system to where fire could tap into and say, hey, I'm out here, I've never used this system, but I need a drone company. How close is a drone company? Is it an hour away? Is it 2 hours? Where are they and how quickly could they get here? I'm looking at this national system within Endless to find that. So I can assess I've got this rail situation or some other horrible thing that we want to try to manage. I'm assuming, Mr. Worthland, that's reality I'm talking about. The ability of a person to come out and personally deploy a drone to assess a scene. Is that something that you're aware of or have done yourself?
Yes, as a volunteer for our local sheriff's department, I deployed to a school bus accident where a young teenager ended up succumbing to his injuries, but he hit a school bus, and we ended up photographing the scene more rapidly for them. And as a result of that, the Arizona DPS now has drones within their squads or their districts that now do a lot of that work. And that was kind of based off of the work that I did out here in Southern Arizona, because all the agencies or search and rescues may have drones available to them, but at some point the saturation level of timeliness gets overtaken. So the civilians that are vetted and in the system can come in and assist, because you got to think a drone generally for battery power only flies for 30 minutes. It's got to be changed out. And then the operators can only operate so much. So if you're trying to do a 24/7 operation, you may need a lot of drone operators coming in to be able to do the coverage and the different types of drones, whether it be LiDAR, photogrammetry, multispectral, whatever it may be. You may have to look for that different asset that somebody may or may not have within their system.
Excellent. I mean, if we don't think about that, but that's reality, especially with what happened in Ohio. I can only imagine that would have been a golden tool to have in the tool bag.
Could we recognize also on this call is Assistant Chief Matt Flagler with the City of Cincinnati Fire Department. And Matt has been a tremendous partner with the county. In many areas of the country, I know this is common, there's always a city-county competition. And I will say that Matt is one of the guys that is absolutely bridged that relationships between city and county to where we operate almost seamlessly on a day-to-day basis. But I think he would have some good insight, especially for Senator Blessing's office, to hear from one of the larger cities in Ohio, Matt Flagler, Assistant Chief.
Matt, are you still on the call?
I am. You woke me up.
Oh, come on. It wasn't that bad, was it? Listen, and I know you just sent him a message. You wanted to know about firefighter Randy's interior design people to put an ambulance inside his living room in case you want to do that at your house. We'll get you his contact information.
Pretty snazzy.
Yeah, pretty nice. Hey, I'll let you have the floor, and I apologize. I may have seen a quick image of you, but I didn't know you were on the call. So thanks, Andy.
No, I just appreciate, like Andy said, our goal is just to share information as much as possible. And we work extremely hard to get that information in the hands of the firefighters on the street. That's, until it's in their hands, it is of limited value. Even though we have a lot of books on the shelf in the Emergency Operations Center, I need the people that are boots in the mud to have that information as quickly as possible. So I do appreciate the idea of being able to share that information quickly. I was just thinking of, you were talking about the location of drone units, but I was really more interested in even the people that help us maintain the infrastructure. So if I know where my waterworks crews are, my public utilities crews are, if I have a group of incidents, I can start to, as an incident commander, I can start to build my command structure around just knowing that there's one truck, there's 5 trucks. It just helps me have a lot of awareness to help me manage incidents. So I also serve as the city's emergency manager. So looking at that at an even bigger scale across our whole community of how we can share information with each other could be really valuable. So I appreciate it. And we, like Andy said, we use ASAP to PSAP all day long. And it's been a real asset to us to see the same kind of people looking at a problem that has been, like you said, goes back to the Eisenhower administration. Gives me some optimism that we can actually move the needle on this.
I tell you, I'm not sure what you're doing in your part-time, but I'd like to have you become one of our spokesmen. That was a good download. I appreciate it. One other person, and we do want to kind of wrap this up. I just got a message from somebody about it. Chuck Komet. And Chuck, are you on the call still?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
I guess it's good morning out there still, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Coming up on 8:30 Arizona time.
Oh, it's really early. Still coffee time.
Yes, sir.
I met Chuck through his work in County Emergency Management, Arizona. Chuck, if you want to just give, and again, we're trying to wrap the thoughts up here real quick. If you want to give just a short synopsis of where you worked and where you have worked and why you have an interest, because you have a particular role in emergency management that I don't think anybody else on the screen has, but it is vital for a very important segment of our nation's population. Please, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Good morning, everybody. Like Jim said, my name is Chuck Komet, the career firefighter paramedic for a time, but my last 15 years has been in emergency management, both at the tribal, at the county level, and at the state level, where I've been able to serve on several different national committees, including the FEMA's National Advisory Council in its inaugural years back in 2007 to 2012. I'm also part of an incident management team out of Texas that I've been able to deploy over the last 9 years to hurricanes, to COVID in Texas, as well as the unaccompanied minors, the shelter operations that were going on for excuse me, the Department of Health and Human Services. But really what I want to kind of hit on with what Jim was talking about and everybody else on this call, for emergency management, our cornerstone, part of our foundation is trying to create that common operating picture, or that situational awareness, or the situational picture, if you will, both at the emergency operations center level, as well as to be able to provide that information to the incident commander out in the field, or incident commanders if it's a larger incident, of what their resources are that are available to them as they make those requests to the EOC. And at the same time, we are also trying to provide good, actionable information to our leadership, both elected officials as well as department heads, so that way they know what their role is with regards to this incident, and so not just the response, but going into the recovery piece, because there is that overlap between the two areas. And something like this, this platform would be crucial to us being able to accomplish that mission and that job. And I can't tell you the number of times over the years where it has been extremely frustrating to try to get information from out in the field that we can turn into actionable information that we can provide to others. And then trying to get those resources has always been difficult. Tracking them has always been difficult, but like to the point that the doctor said, and to what Jim said in particular, that we can do this in the private sector all day long. We've been doing it for years. And way back in the day when we first established funding for FirstNet to talk about interoperable communications, I don't think that we really were thinking about 15 years later that truly interoperable communications does have a huge component with regard to data. And that's what I think Jim's platform is really kind of taking us that next step in this interoperable world that we're trying to live in.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to say it. Thanks. I appreciate that. And to show appreciation to everybody here, I do want to try to finish out that video, which is another minute or two. And then if we have any closing questions or remarks, we'll go there.
I'd like to close today by thanking everyone taking part in this important conversation. We've identified a national problem. The inlet's architecture lacks vital tools, processes critically needed to automate delivery of the closest life-saving support services during emergencies. We have the solution. Working with academia from across the country, industry, and first responder groups, we can create a paradigm shift in preparedness by utilizing smart technology, phone apps, tracking real-time availability, software, linking resources from single jurisdiction needs to mega region responses, sharing response data in joint domain environments. Let's pilot the operational development of this technology and give inlets those tools. Because after all, every response is a critical response.
Is there any closing remarks from anybody present here today that you want to summarize, or something that you wanted said? All right. I'd like to personally thank everybody for being on the call today. It was fantastic. We had a lot of great information shared. A lot of you were very patient with not an opportunity to talk about everything you want to do, but your input was critical. And especially the folks from Senator Blessing's office, there is going to be follow-up, of course, with the partners you're looking at today, to talk about getting more of this moved in front of the right people. So they understand that this solution is really at hand. And Ohio stands to be not an advocate, but just somebody that brings a new tool forward that the entire nation needs. And as bad as things were in East Palestine and the terrible thing that occurred there, if that's a catalyst for some great change to take place, we want to move that direction. Thank you, everyone. And you're free to jump off the call. We're going to stop this now at this point. Annie?
Hey, Jim, can I say something real quick?
One more thing. Yeah.
Hey, Jim, like I said, you were talking about drones real quick. I'll touch on this quickly.
Sure.
For accidents, I have been involved in a search for an elderly man who was lost for quite a while in the cold, and contacting a drone company to help find him was a lengthy process. So in the business where seconds count, time is everything. And that's all I wanted to say.
No, thank you. Good point. Good point. Anyone else? I want to personally thank you all. Have a great day.